Welcome to RDB Reviews, Dark Side of the Ring from Vice
TV. Yep.
I have watched some episodes of Dark Side now on Ryan's recommendation, and I'm a big fan. Very well put together. And we're going to talk about that today. So would you like to start us off any way you like, Ryan?
Yes. Dark Side of the Ring is a Canadian documentary TV series, and the series focuses on the controversial subjects and events within the realm of professional wrestling.
Indeed.
Which is going on for 3 seasons now and 19 episodes.
Premiered on Viceland April 10th, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan says there are now 3 seasons of it.
They had 3 different people commenting this before, like Dutch Mantel for season 1, Nick Foley for 1 episode, and now the current one is Chris Jericho.
I noticed at the end of one of the episodes it said narrated by Chris Jericho. This is the Chris Benoit double-parter. I didn't really notice any narration through the program. Chris Jericho featured in that one as a talking head. But obviously, the whole thing was put together so well, I just soaked up the whole thing and didn't think too much about that. But okay.
Nice. The one we're going to talk about today is either part 1 and 2 of the dreaded Chris Benoit murder-suicide tragedy from 2007.
I watched this recently and I cried, man. That was really upsetting. It just made me reflect on my own family. It's a really sad story, incredibly sad. What happened to him? What happened to his family, I should say, not what happened to him. He did the murders.
But also he killed himself.
Yeah, and if we are not that concerned with plot spoiling, we can discuss some of the conclusions of that program, which is that it was a mixture of potentially steroid abuse, but also concussion. It talks about how he must have taken thousands of hits to the head, and how that causes your brain to sort of rot and it changes your personality. And it's a very serious, dark. The program earns its title. It was incredibly dark watching, but also very entertaining, really well produced.
Yeah, and also, to me, this was the two-parter that you really want to showcase, really set the bar for this program to be must-see. This is it.
Yeah, definitely if you're a wrestling fan, because the program is very impressive at getting lots of famous wrestlers and their spouses and their in-laws and executives and that kind of thing. I haven't seen Vince McMahon himself yet do an interview, but they get a lot of famous people that you know. So if you're a wrestling fan, you're like, there's Jake the Snake, or there's Razor Ramon.
I was going to say about Vince, have you seen pictures of him lately?
I haven't, no. I don't know what he looks like nowadays.
He's like in his 70s.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the program, as we said earlier, it came out in 2019, so it's a very recent program. He's quite an old man, and he can say no. There was, I think, in the Chris Benoit episode, possibly, I was watching a bit of the Randy Savage as well, the very first episode.
Yeah.
And it mentioned that we approached this person for commentary, but they declined to comment on the program. So it shows that they reach out to lots of people. Not everyone says yes, because it is very personal stuff.
Yeah, indeed. And some moments in this show is very personal.
With the Chris Benoit episode, Ryan, because you said that we're going to focus on that. That is part of season 2. It was cathartic. That means it was good emotionally for the people to do it. Chris Benoit's surviving son gives a very heartfelt sort of thanks at the end of the program to Chris Jericho for reuniting him with his auntie. And I thought that was so sweet of Chris Jericho to get involved like that, because you could have easily just backed away. You could have gone, this is so crazy, I can't get involved. But he helped heal the family relations.
Well, that's why Chris Jericho is the best in the world at what he does.
Yeah. The Chris Benoit episode talks about the relationship between Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero as wrestlers, and how Eddie's untimely passing mucked up Chris Benoit.
I can imagine for anyone, it's like the only friend in the world to somebody.
A lot of tragedy in celebrity entertainment, the film industry, the music industry, but with wrestling, it's really focused at children, kind of family or audience. There must be a lot of pressure to keep your emotions in check and to make sure that you're giving the best performance for the kids. Because I, as a child, I never knew anything dark about wrestling. For me, it was always fun and exciting.
I feel like it probably one of the best wrestling, well-made documentaries I ever seen.
Yeah, its production value is fantastic. They have, as
Yeah.
I say, all of these people that they've clearly paid money to buy their time. They have lots of aerial camera shots helping you understand where things happened, and it's really well made. It's got a lot of money behind it, clearly going very strong.
I think it's got an entire YouTube channel dedicated to Dark Side of the Ring.
Season 3, 2021. There are quite a few episodes that are to be announced.
I think some of those episodes that you said haven't been named because they don't want to get it out there for the general public before September.
What's special about September, Ryan?
Well, it's coming back for part 2 of season 3.
The last one was aired on June 10th, and they haven't actually got viewing figures for that yet because that was fairly recently. Does it release every week when it comes back, or is it once a month?
I think it's every week.
And how would one watch that? How would you watch a new episode? Is it on Viceland TV itself?
So you can watch a new episode of Viceland TV, or here in the UK, but also on YouTube.
Yeah, so their YouTube channel will feature the new episodes just as they're released.
Yeah, or probably just show like behind the scenes of either narrating or acting the parts. The black, blurry look at the wrestlers on the show.
That was really impressive to me, how they had actors portraying the events that they're discussing, and they do a great job of sort of blurring the image. They had an actor that looked enough like Chris Benoit in silhouette that they could have him portraying what's being described. Very cinematic. It was very movie-like.
Yeah, and the one that comes after this was The Life and Crimes of New Jack.
Yeah, that's episode 9 of the overall, episode 3 of season 2.
Yeah.
Jerome Young, American professional wrestler best known by his ring name New Jack, Extreme Championship Wrestling ECW wrestler.
Yeah, which is basically famous for pretty much almost sending people in the hospital so much and probably just falling off from higher buildings. Yearly almost tortured a younger kid in the ring for no reason other than putting on performance. Real life blends in too far. It focuses on somebody who almost committed murder in the ring.
So he nearly killed someone in the ring, and
Yeah.
that's him taking it too seriously.
Yes, and that got like that kid's dad angry. I almost bought a suit.
There was a thing where Chris Eubank, the boxer, his son, put someone in a coma a few years ago, and obviously that's never the intention, but you are punching each other in the head. With wrestling, you are hitting each other in the head, you're jumping off of turnstiles.
And
Yeah.
I think I remember back to the Benoit thing.
Yeah.
It's like Jericho in their second episode. He explains it like perfectly when you like hitting yourself.
Yeah, he talks
Yeah,
about how
like-
you just tense up and then you
Yeah,
take.
like a take it like
Yeah,
like-
it seems so. For me, it seems so silly that it took until 2007 for them to start taking that seriously. And who knows if they still even are, because it's all about making money.
They still use steel chairs as in the WWE, but they do just hit it like in the back instead of the heads because of all we know now with concussions.
When we were watching the Royal Rumble, I was commenting that, oh, it's so nice to see them hitting each other with chairs again, because I remember that as a child. And when I watched the Chris Benoit episode, I felt really bad about feeling that way, because that is potentially what brought on his mania. They'll never know what happened to Chris Benoit, and that's really dark.
And I think that's the biggest tragedy of all.
Yeah.
Nobody will know.
Whilst we're on the subject of darkness, Ryan, so I have gone on to New Jack's Wikipedia page. I've not heard of him as a wrestler before, but I've just scrolled to the bottom and it highlights that he died on the 14th of May from a heart attack. And there seems to be, so Eddie Guerrero died of a heart disease at 38, was mentioned in
2005. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously Chris Benoit took his own life at the age of 40. We've talked before about Mr. Perfect having a drugs overdose. Macho Man Randy Savage also died of a heart attack in 2011. There was a point made in the Chris Benoit episode that professional wrestlers die really young, and they are much more likely than an NFL football player, which is very striking, because you think, surely if it's staged, they're not injuring themselves that much. But these guys are all dying of heart attacks in their 50s or
Yeah.
40s, 30s even.
Or commit suicide.
They're not living into their old age. These guys don't seem to make it into their dotage, which is really tragic.
Another wrestler just died like recently. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, infirmia and heart disease.
Very medieval ages to die. You know, people shouldn't be dying at 38 or 40. So something is wrong. I would like to see it addressed. I don't know if they are in 2021 seriously thinking about the health of these guys, but it feels like they weren't interested. Vince McMahon wasn't interested.
I remember when I heard the news about that death. I remember I was in South School at the time when we had our like dinner breaks. Normally just do our routines before I go back to work, and I just go on my computer and do what I do, just search the internet for stupidities. I looked up on WWE.com and it said Chris Benoit dead, June 27, 2007.
Fan of Chris Benoit as a wrestler before.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell.
I got the action figures, I got those.
That's one of the really dark aspects of this, is this guy did such a terrible thing. But like it says in the program, they didn't know all the facts when he was first reported dead. So they did this big tribute, this 3-hour-long tribute. There's a very chilling bit in the episode where Chavo Guerrero, he mentions that I would trust him with my kids. He was such a good guy. And you just think, oh my God, you know, that's because they didn't know that he'd killed his wife and son at that time. Like you're thinking, he was a great wrestler. I was a huge fan of his, but you didn't know what happened.
Yeah, and like I said before, that's the biggest tragedy of them all. Nobody will know.
Kids are just left wondering, like, why is my hero dead, and why is he a serial murderer?
My small little brother is dead.
The older son, who features in this episode that we're referring to, the Chris Benoit double-parter, which is viewable actually on the internet. I recommend watching it. It's really heartbreaking, but very, very well-made television.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So many people were rooting for these guys to just be good guys and to live a nice, healthy, long life. And it just doesn't seem to, I don't know if it's the business model or if it's, you know, individuals. But yeah, there is a lot of darkness in wrestling. I've really come to appreciate that since Ryan put me onto this program.
Or it's probably the people running these companies who are probably just too old to realize, hey, we need to take these seriously now. Yeah,
it'd be nice to see how it evolves after the likes of Vince McMahon, who takes it on and hopefully takes better care of people.
And also, it's got me one of the biggest harsh truths coming out of it the first time, and then watching them again, is, these guys are wrestlers, they are performers. Every night, entertain the audience, blah. But also, and it's got me a long time to process in my head, these people are like us, like human beings, who are doing this for a job.
One of the really tragic aspects, and I think Chris Jericho sums it up in part 2 of the Chris Benoit episode, is that it nearly took down wrestling. It was such a tragedy. And Vince McMahon
I didn't think about that at the time.
Yeah, it was so controversial. They were trying to distance themselves from him. So he's basically never mentioned. The name Benoit doesn't ever get mentioned again. And that's because in a cold, hard kind of way, Vince McMahon's like, I've got to protect my business. I can't be associated because I'm making entertainment for kids. I can't be associated with this guy anymore. For Chris Benoit to know that his legacy is destroyed and that he nearly took down the one job that he ever did and loved. Chris Jericho says it's the one thing he ever loved professionally was wrestling, and he nearly killed it. Very dark.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I didn't thought about at the time that it's going to take down wrestling. Even the way we know now, wrestling is still going strong to this day. So I'm not surprised, really, the WWE keeps going on the way it's been going on for so long.
It's got a huge fan base, and people like me and you, we can dip in and out of it.
Like me.
Yeah, we've been watching it for years and years and years, so we can always come back to it.
But I brought you back. You
did, Ryan. Yeah, and like you said, you got rid of some of your toys, you started to grow up at about 15, 16, and then you got back into it.
Yeah, I started like eating healthily now and lost a lot of weight.
Are you training for the ring?
Well, I wish I was, but with this pandemic, I can't.
I could have been a contender. Ryan could have been a wrestler, but not for the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like that.
But my argument there as well,
Yeah.
when you said they could have killed wrestling,
Yeah.
almost killed wrestling. Well, if that's the case, why is there still NXT or Today, or NXT UK, or AEW, or Ring of Honor, or all
Yeah.
those other independent promotions?
I think what Chris Jericho probably meant was WWE, that it could have described that corporation, but not wrestling in general. But it was so bad for the company image that they had to manage it. And that's another dark side of all this, is that the name Benoit was just toxic. And they had to be like, no, we're not associated, even though we just celebrated him with WrestleMania.
They had one of those experts on concussions,
Yeah.
Christopher Nowinski.
Former wrestler, and he got into neuroscience because he was
Yeah.
concussed enough times. That's really interesting that this guy would change his entire career to academia to study his own brain damage.
Yeah, I've seen him since 2004. He's not really because of.
Okay.
I gotta dedicate myself to something else.
They make a point in the program that CNN and Fox News and all these people were covering the Chris Benoit tragedy so much, and they were throwing all sorts of mudslinging, like, oh, it's all steroid abuse. And so the networks were almost out to get wrestling, was the point I think JR makes in the program. He says, like, all the networks are out to get us. And so that's where they're talking about wrestling is under threat, because people are just waiting for the opportunity to say wrestling's really dangerous and it's really stupid and it shouldn't be happening. You know, it's like blaming gun violence on video games.
Look at the individual, their bodies throughout the years. Definitely like the 80s, steroids.
Yeah, they say everyone has to be 6 foot tall and massive, or else you don't get any kind of promotion. And that's what led Chris Benoit, because he was under 6 foot tall, to build up his body. And he did take a lot of steroids.
And thank God I didn't take steroids.
I don't think they're good for you, Ryan. I mean, you might look amazing in the mirror, but then you do have these crazy mood swings and what they call roid rage in the program. That's what they thought Chris Benoit was suffering when he killed his wife and his child. But it's this combination of things potentially, you know, concussions, steroids, stress. But it could also be that he just had mental health issues as an individual. And it had nothing to do with the wrestling industry, but who knows?
So yeah, I thought it was like a very gripping 2-part episode. In my opinion, this put Dark Side of the Ring on the map.
I love seeing the older wrestlers that I used to cheer on. So the program has some fantastic archive footage. They show a lot of footage from the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. So if you want to go back down memory lane, this is really good for that purpose as well.
Oh yeah, the Brawl for Wall, which is the WWF idea of boxing in 1999.
Yeah.
Just get a group of like lower card people on there and they can fight boxing.
You've mentioned this one to me before, and I get this impression now that if you're not Andre the Giant, you need to do something really gimmicky to get the attention of Vince McMahon and to get like screen time. I kind of understand now why all these gimmicks come around. It's because if you're an average height person, you have to do all these crazy dangerous things. So boxing, and like you say, it was really dangerous.
Oh yeah, and most of it is in the peak of the Attitude Era of the WWF, where they were being WCW in the ratings. And look at some of the wrestlers from that Brawl for Wall, like the Godfather, the
I don't know that one.
I know that's what I named for.
Yeah.
Bark gun, draws, which are sadly paralyzed for the waist down.
Result of wrestling?
Yes.
Yeah.
Doing a stunt in the ring that went terribly wrong.
Yeah, I'll just say quick, they mentioned in the Chris Benoit episode that Kid Dynamite ends up in a wheelchair because he keeps doing this headbutt move off the turnstile. It ruined his spine.
Let me go over other episodes of season 2. There's the one on Superfly Jimmy Snuka about the death of Nanny Nutritina.
And Nancy Argentino.
Dina Warbo. There's one here called David Schultz.
The slap heard around the world.
Yeah, when he slapped that reporter on the face.
I think I remember that. I'm not sure.
Herb Abram and the UWF.
Yeah.
Which is entitled Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Herb Abram story.
That's the title of the episode. So that tells you quite a lot. You're like, I know what I'm in for, kind of. I'm going to steal this one from you. The Last Ride of the Road Warriors. I love the Road Warriors. They were so big. The 90s. They had the shoulder pads, the whole Mad Max thing going on. Very post-apocalyptic. I love them.
Yeah. But now, fast forward to 2021, neither of them are around anymore.
You feel obliged, Ryan, every time I mention the Road Warriors to tell me that they're dead. It's like, you don't need to do that anymore. I know. It's very, but
Which is sad, but
it's becoming more of a given, man. I'm finding that these guys.
Excuse me. Let me copy as well. Also, it's like a trend.
A trend. So the trend is that they're all dying before they get to the age of 60.
Or 70.
Eddie Guerrero died at 38 from a heart attack. You know, Macho Man was only 58. So they're not making it to 60, which is crazy. So just to remind people, we're going down rabbit holes, but we're talking about Dark Side of the Ring, which is this TV program, which you can watch on the internet. There's so much material for this program. There's so much kind of darkness. It makes me wonder if this is almost a threat to wrestling itself. If they keep making all of these exposés of the dark side, are the fans going to go, I don't want to watch wrestling anymore?
It's going to be a tough one to answer, really, because it depends how wrestling has gone by over the years. I think definitely in the 80s and the 90s. Like watching these episodes, you're probably like, oh, I didn't know this. So basically, like, it's like an education for newer fans. You're probably like, I can't believe like this even happened.
There's quite a bit of violence towards women from these wrestlers, you know, and it's quite casually mentioned, like, oh, she had a black eye and he cut her lip. I'm interested in knowing whether or not this program might undermine the integrity of wrestling itself.
Root for the other people that's beating the other guys.
You have to know that they're true blue, though. I mean, there must be some really good guys out there in the wrestling industry.
With some people who are like responsibly like stay away from drugs. So it probably comes down to like the people and how they take care of themselves in this messy environment.
Company line would be, it's all about individuals, and Chris Benoit was a bad apple. But there might be a culture of misogyny, which is like, you know, violence and hatred towards women, for example. And they need to sort that out. They need to say, right, guys, I know that you're all macho and, you know, this and that, but you need to consider, we're post-Me Too movement now. You guys need to be, you know, very respectful and clean cut in your personal life as well as in the ring.
But also, look at some of the wrestlers we see today. I mean, not too many look like they're on something. Don't look like they're like muscle bound like Hulk Hogan or like The Rock, Big Boss Man. Those days are long gone.
So do you mean that they're more lean, perhaps more
more lean, like basically like us.
Okay, they're more normal looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the 80s, everything was huge. You watch that bit in the Predator movie where Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger do that hand clasp, and you just see their muscles ripping. And that's what the 1980s was all about. You had to have huge guns, and you got that by doing steroids. Yeah,
and that's when the 90s came up. People doesn't want to see like muscle-bound body slam wrestlers anymore.
Yeah.
Average to see who are really good wrestlers. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
Or these days like AJ Styles, John Cena, and all those. The list goes on and on and on.
See any of these wrestlers, check out our YouTube channel. This is a good plug for us. We did the Royal Rumble of this year, and we also covered
Double or Nothing.
There you can see lots of acrobatic wrestlers. They're backflipping off of the turnstile, which these guys that we're talking about, they couldn't have done that. They were too physically heavy on the top.
I just look at the sheet now from season 1, and they focus ones like the Von Erichs family, the last of the Von Erichs, the Fabulous Moolah.
These are the titles of the episodes that Ryan's reading out,
Yeah, season 1. Randy Savage, The Match Made in Heaven.
And that's the first episode. So I've watched a little bit of that, Ryan, just to see how Vice introduces the whole thing. And it's very much up to quality, you know. So they've already got the production value set.
They got the one focusing on the Montreal screw job, which we talked about before, with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, which the thing that changed the fate of wrestling forever.
Infamous and controversial unscripted professional wrestling incident that occurred on November 9th, 1997 at the Survivor Series pay-per-view, in which the World Wrestling Federation owner Vince McMahon and WWF employees covertly manipulated the predetermined outcome of the match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. The manipulation a shoot screw job, in quotations, in professional wrestling parlance, occurred without Hart's knowledge and resulted in Hart, the reigning champion, losing the title to Michaels in his last WWF match before departing for rival promotion WCW. The screw job is generally believed to be an off-screen betrayal of Hart, who was one of the WWF's longest tenured and most popular performers at the time. So what I gleaned from that, Ryan, company didn't want to give Bret Hart a good send-off. They were like, you're leaving the company. We want to take away your belt.
Yeah, because it's the company's top title.
Bret Hart was always a hero for me, and I would have hated to know that Vince McMahon had done this to him. If I knew, I would have been really angry at Vince McMahon, and I would have been totally on Bret Hart's side, because he was the face of the good guy at the time.
Yeah, I only seen this episode access stuff from the Latin library, and I got those old VHSs of WWF Survivor Series 97. This incident, what wrestling fans remember this show for, other than the other things that went on.
The Montreal screw job. Did the fans know at the time on the night that this was a screw job, or did they just accept that it was predetermined?
When they changed wrestling forever, everything is like so out there now.
How do you mean, Ryan?
I seem like this is not real sports anymore. This is a scripted profession. Breast spitting in Vince's face. I think you double-crossed me.
He does that in front of the cameras, does he?
Yes, and he
Okay.
spread like with his fingers, WCW. Yeah.
It's a bad blood behind the scenes that's spilling out in front of the audience, and that's not very professional.
Like Bret Hart punching Vince McMahon so hard in the face. You'll probably see in the documentary. Boom. And his face down the floor. Nobody knows Vince was actually the owner of the company. They just know him as an announcer.
He's the behind the scenes man. People shouldn't even know who Vince McMahon is, but he's quite the celebrity in his own right. And you wonder if all of this is really just about getting ratings. I mean, there's a wonderful line from Chris Jericho at the beginning of the Chris Benoit, the first episode, where he says, look, if you want to call this glorifying a murder for attention, then stop watching now. Because his point is, I appreciate that some people might think that's what we're doing here. Yes, we're being paid to talk about it, but we're not glorifying it. It's a tragedy. But people might see what Vice is doing as glorifying all of this terribleness, because it is entertaining at the same time.
Yeah, and also it depends on like where people see this show. Some people might see it as, oh my God, they're destroying our love for pro wrestling. Why are they doing this?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't argue this is really good stuff.
It is really interesting television as true crime. That's gripping. It's really gripping to try and understand, why did this happen? Seemingly, he had everything going for him. Why did that end in such tragedy? And the tragedy seems to be this rolling theme. Why do these things end so tragically? And if you want to be really dark, you could say maybe Vince McMahon wants it to go that way so he can get more publicity. I don't believe that myself. I'm just throwing that out there as a stupid thing.
That's fair. I think one of them said that Paul Benoit, after like he committed the murders, I think it's Chris Jericho or Charbo, which he said constipating coming to the actual event, as in to wrestle. Even when he's committing his murders. Imagine that. So horrifying.
You watch this episode that Ryan and I are publicizing. It details how Chris Benoit had basically over a weekend murdered his family and was then Googling things like Bible scripture. And then he was actually thinking of going on to keep working. And then he committed suicide that weekend. It's incredibly dark, and it's so wrapped up in his own mental illness that all we can do is look on. Horrifying, but I can't look away. It's really interesting. I'm going to become a fan of this, Ryan. Even though I have problems with its exploitative nature. I mean, I feel like it is being exploitative to a degree, but it is very entertaining and really well produced.
And just the last one that I've got for season 2 here, is the final days of Owen Hart, which is another tragic, sad one.
This is the last episode of season 2 that Ryan's referring to now, which aired on 19th of May 2020.
One of their highest rated episodes, which is about the tragic death of Owen Hart. At the 1999 Over the Edge pay-per-view, which is about to beat the Godfather for the Intercontinental Championship. Dressed up in a stupid character, the Blue Blazer, which is like a superhero character, and one of his news.
Cable.
Yet Sting like gets to the ring with how he went tragedy won.
I've just read what this.
And he just falls down.
Yeah, so he fell 70 feet from the rafters into the ring. As he fell, he landed chest first on the top.
Yes.
Cable failed, basically, that was holding him up. He was meant to sort of descend into the ring, but he fell onto the rope. The audience didn't see this. Television viewers didn't see this. A pre-recorded interview was shown at the start of Hart's descent. And when the broadcast returned live, the cameras quickly turned away from the ring to the audience. Jim Ross, one of the commentators, informed pay-per-view viewers that Hart had fallen. The incident was not part of the entertainment and that it was a real situation. That's horrible because everyone's then scrambling to explain to the audience, this is real. We need to take care of this. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, I gotta say, Jim Ross was brilliant.
Yeah.
Of explaining this.
I've got time for him. Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah, and probably you ever seen Owen Hart. He was one of the best wrestlers.
I remember Owen and Bret Hart. I remember Bret Hart more than Owen, but it's way possible that I was a fan of his. I can't remember now.
This tragedy forbidden, which is really like film his wife, which is not allowed WWE to expose Owen's name out there for commercial view.
So she didn't like the company using his name after this.
Yeah, because they feel they are responsible for what happened to Owen.
Someone made a technical mistake. I mean, clearly it was an accident. Tested it fine. But on the night, it didn't work.
Yeah, and I think Jim Ross was the only guy, the only WWF representative there, and they were not happy to see him, as in the funeral.
That gets mentioned in the Chris Benoit episode. So he was sent as a representative to the funeral of Chris Benoit's wife and son.
Yeah.
And he was not welcome because they considered was responsible for all of this.
Yeah, the same as Owen Hart.
Controversial company, isn't it? WWE. They do have literal blood on their hands, but they haven't gone out of business. In fact, they're still thriving. And that's because the fans, as much as they might hold them responsible for those incidents, wrestling itself is still good. It's still worth watching.
Oh yeah, they were watching, if you agree for their performance.
Well, these kind of things often lead to changes in the policy and the culture, and it means that people are safer as a result. So as tragic as what happened to Owen Hart is,
I think it's taking more care now, more than ever.
More of a value on the quality of their lives and that they hopefully live longer. This is something I'm going to pay attention to now.
There's one about election in Korea. WCW wrestlers in 1999 had to perform for the North Koreans. Episode dedicated to the Ultimate Warrior.
Cool. Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior is a fantastic documentary about him.
So thank you.
Thank you, man. So that's Dark Side of the Ring, Vice TV, now reviewed by us. Give it a watch if you're a wrestling fan. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, it's really entertaining. So check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, and we'll see you again.
You're welcome.
Bye, mate.